Hey everybody, it's Dan again with part 2 of our card grading experiment. A while ago I sent 41 baseball cards to 3 different grading companies. I sent 20 cards to PSA, 10 cards to Beckett, and 11 cards to SGC. And after waiting for a while, I finally got my first box back. They are from SGC. So let's open these up and see what we've got. So how long did it take to get the cards back from SGC? Well, when I sent the cards in, SGC quoted a time of 5 to 10 business days, which is 1 to 2 weeks. And it took longer than that. It took about a month, which was approximately 20 business days. Now, on the one hand, that's not horrible because both PSA and Beckett are both currently quoting wait times a lot longer than 1 month. But on the other hand, when you tell customers that it's going to take 1 to 2 weeks, it should take 1 to 2 weeks. And if you know that it's going to take longer, which SGC should be able to tell how long it's going to take, or at least reasonably predict how long, and if they know it's going to take approximately a month, they should tell customers it's going to take about a month. But all in all, it wasn't too long of a wait. So it took a little bit longer to get the cards back than I expected, but how much did it cost to get these cards graded by SGC? Well, SGC was running a special at the time for cards from the 70s and the 80s, and I took advantage of that special. But when you take into account the cost of the grading, the shipping to SGC and the shipping back to me, plus insurance, it came out to a cost per card of $16.06, which is still considerably less than what PSA and Beckett are charging. So I think it's a pretty good deal from SGC. So what about the slabs from SGC, the actual slabs the cards are in? Well, I actually like the slabs. They're pretty classy. They have the black border and the white label. They call it the tuxedo look, which is why on the box they have a tuxedo. But when I looked at the slabs more closely, I noticed that every single one of them that came back has scratches on it. Very small scratches, like something slid across the plastic. So I was a little disappointed with that. You can't really see it unless you look closely and at the right angle, but they're brand new slabs, so they really should be in pristine condition. So overall, slabs were good, but a little disappointed with the scratches. Now, the biggest factor for my experiment is obviously the card grades themselves. That's the reason why you send cards in to be graded, is to get the best grades, or at least to get accurate grades. And I think I did it fairly well in my predictions. Overall, for my predictions, I was off by less than half a point per card, which I think is pretty good, especially considering it was my first attempt at predicting grades of cards. Unfortunately, my average is a little bit misleading because I had some cards that were way too low based on my prediction, and some cards where my prediction was way too high. The average was pretty good, but there were some cards that I was off quite a bit. So let's look at the individual cards. Let's start with the cards that I got correct, because that, it's always nice to start with what you get right, right? We've got a 1985 Topps Lou Whitaker, 85 Topps Lou Whitaker All-Star, and a Cecil Fielder 86 Topps rookie card. This card, the centering is near perfect. The corners are perfect. The edges were perfect. The focus is great. The card all around looks fantastic. I did find one very small divot on the front of the card in one of the areas that don't really matter, and I thought maybe SGC will see the same thing I did and give it a 9, so I predicted a 9, and I was 100% correct on that one. This one, you can see the centering is off a bit. This edge is smaller than this edge, and the top edge is a little bit wider than this bottom edge. I measured it with a ruler that has millimeter markings, and with that you can get a very good estimate on the centering, the percentage rating of the centering, and I didn't predict, but based on that centering, it was a 7, and there are also some very slight scratches on the surface that I could see when you hold a card and you kind of tilt it towards a light. You can see the scratches a whole lot better. I noticed a few small scratches, so I predicted a 7, and it came back a 7. This Cecil Fielder rookie card, the edge is a bit worn, if you will. These 1986 Topps, or any card that has a dark edge, any type of wear on the edge shows, and that's the case with these 86 Topps cards. You can also see that the centering is also off, with this border being wider than this border over here. Overall, I predicted a 7, and it came back a 7. So those are the 3 cards that I got correct. Next, we've got these 2 cards that I predicted an 8 for both cards. SGC graded them both 8.5. So these 2 came back a half a grade in my favor. Not all of the grading companies do half grades, but SGC does. Both of these cards have just a slightly worn corner. One of the corners is just slightly worn. And the centering is more like a 8 than a 9 or a 10. So especially on this Lou Whitaker, the centering is just a little more off, probably more like a 9. So I predicted an 8 based on the corners and the centering. They both came back 8.5, and I'm pretty happy with that. Okay, now we're gonna start getting into the area where I was a bit more off in my predictions. You might remember that I had said that overall my average was only half a point off, which I think is pretty good. But there were some outliers, and now we're starting to get into territory that I was off a little bit more. You also might notice that there's a lot of Lou Whitaker cards, and that's because Lou Whitaker is my favorite player. I grew up listening to the Tigers and Ernie Harwell, listening to the games with that little radio under my pillow and fall asleep at night, and Lou Whitaker was my favorite player, Sweet Lou. So I do have a lot of Lou Whitaker cards, and when I was sending in my first ever batch of cards to be graded, I figured I might as well send in some of these Lou Whitakers. But these all, I was off by 1 point. I predicted a 7 on this one, came back a 6. Predicted a 9 on this one, because as far as grading goes, as far as the quality of the card goes, it was pretty much an exact match for this 1985 Lou Whitaker. This is an 84, so I predicted a 9. It came back an 8. And then in this one, I predicted an 8 because the centering is off from top to bottom, and it had one corner that was just slightly frayed, so I predicted an 8 on this card, and it came back a 7. This one is the one I'm probably the most disappointed with. I was predicting a 7 and thought if I'm lucky, maybe it would even come back an 8. The centering is good. It doesn't have, if you're familiar with this 78 rookie cards, Lou Whitaker is like this, the Paul Molitor, Alan Trammell is the same way, where you'll get a lot of ink smudging down here. This one doesn't have any of the ink smudging. The centering is good. Maybe the focus is a little soft, but the corners are still great and the edges are still great. And I thought, I'll predict a 7 and I'll hope for an 8, and it came back a 6. So I'm a little disappointed on that one, but what can you do? And now we're to the ones that I was just way off. I predicted a 6 for both of these. You can see this Kirby Puckett came back a 4, and this Lou Whitaker came back a 3. So a 6 down to a 4, a 6 down to a 3. When I opened up the box from SGC, I said, what in the world happened? And then I think I figured it out. So the lesson that I want everyone to take away from this, if you're not paying attention, pay attention. Grading companies hate creases on baseball cards. This one, I think what happened is over time this card had warped so it was curved, and then I put it into a flat plastic holder to send to SGC, and the very action of flattening the card out caused it to develop just micro creases all up and down the card. You can see them if you hold it up to a light and kind of tilt it and look really, really closely, and you can definitely see them if you look at it under a jeweler's loupe. So lesson learned on that one, if you're taking a card that has warped over time, be careful that when you flatten it out, it doesn't kind of crack the creases here. And it's because the surface of this card is kind of a shiny material and the back is just plain cardboard. And so it didn't age at the same rate. Now this one here, excuse me, I said, why in the world did this get a 3 when the centering is good, the edges are pretty good. There was a little bit more fraying, so I thought, all right, it's probably at least a 6, right? I'll predict a 6. When I opened it up and I saw the 3, I said, there's got to be something that I missed. And sure enough, there's about a 3 or 4 millimeter long little surface crease right here. It doesn't even go through to the back side, so it's not a full bend. It's just the corner got, or not the corner, but this area got crinkled somehow to create a little crease. I missed it before I sent it into SGC. The professionals at SGC did not miss it. So they gave it a 3, and that's, again, lesson learned. They hate creases. So if it's got a crease, it's probably not even worth grading. Well, we are to the final card of the 11 cards that I sent into SGC for my grading experiment. This is a 1988 Donruss Tom Glavine card. And this card right here makes me question the ability of the grading company a little bit. We've already talked about some of the other cards, like this Lou Whitaker rookie card that I was hoping to get an 8. I predicted a 7, but I thought maybe I'll get lucky and get an 8. You could say that I'm biased on a card like this. My favorite player, it's a rookie card. My dad gave me this card when I was a kid as a gift. So maybe you could say that I was being biased in my expectations of getting a 7 or maybe an 8. But this one, I predicted a 6. And it came back an 8. Now, granted, that's in my favor. I'll take the extra 2 points. But let me zoom in on this card, and I think you'll be able to see, even just on the video camera, that this corner right here is not good. It has a slight, not really a bend, but almost a bend in it, or a crease. This corner is better, but still not great. It's fairly frayed, more frayed than an 8 should be. This corner as well, also a bit frayed. So when I was doing my predictions, I was trying not to be biased, and I was trying not to have wishful thinking. I was trying to actually grade with my predictions, or I was trying to set my predictions a little bit tough. And I would encourage anyone who's going to send in cards, do that. Like, look at the cards with a very critical eye and try to find something wrong. Don't try to justify the card and say, oh, I think this one might be a 9 or maybe even a 10. Look at it with a very critical eye and say, this is a 6 at best, because it's got 3 substandard corners, but SGC gave it an 8. And I'm assuming that more than one person there saw the grade. So I guess this is just a reminder that the people doing the grading are human as well. And sometimes they might just make mistakes. Now, this mistake was in my favor, so I will take it. But it's something to keep in mind when sending cards in to be graded. The people grading them are humans, just like you and me. Finally, I want to look at one of these cards in particular. It is the Wade Boggs All-Star card. Okay, so here is that Wade Boggs All-Star card. Maybe if there were any eagle eye viewers earlier in this video, you picked up on something. It says 1987 All-Star. When I was filling out the paperwork to send these baseball cards into SGC, there was another card, this one, a 1985 All-Star card, and I had 1985 on the brain. So when I was filling out the section for this card, which is not a 1985 card, I wrote 1985 on the paperwork. And nobody at SGC caught it. They printed the label 1985 tops. Number 4 Wade Boggs All-Star. Obviously this card is not from 1985. It says 1987 right on it, which means it's a 1988 tops. I'm a little bit concerned that no one at SGC caught this. Now granted, it was my error. I'll 100% admit that it was my error. I wrote it down wrong. But I would think multiple human beings at SGC should have looked at this and caught my error and fixed it. So now I have an error card. I guess I have an error card. It's a graded error card, or it's a grading error card. Either way, I wanted to show it to you because I found that to be very interesting. Overall, I have to say that I'm slightly disappointed with SGC. First off, we have the small scratches that were on the front of all of the slabs. I don't know what's up with that. Secondly was the slightly inconsistent grading. And then of course there's the label that was completely wrong. Once I get all the cards back from all 3 companies, I'm gonna do a video where I grade the graders, which should be pretty fun. So it'll be interesting to see what I get back from PSA and what I get back from Beckett. But in the meantime, please subscribe to my channel, check out my other videos. Thanks for watching, and God bless.